it breaks my heart when I feel like people are so comfortable with not being okay that that's a better choice than taking a chance on trying something new and the possible transformation. Because when you're doing self-care for yourself, it is not transactional, it is transformational.
Welcome to The Exit Interview, a podcast for Black educators. This podcast is more than storytelling, it's archival justice. For too long, the voices of Black educators who have left traditional spaces in education have been silenced, dismissed, or left out of the record. Here, we reclaim that narrative. Every interview is a living archive capturing the wisdom, resilience, and truth of Black educators who have shaped classrooms, communities, and generations. Together, we name the challenges: racial battle fatigue, systemic inequities, the weight of caring too much, but we also honor the brilliance and joy that Black educators bring, the creativity, the innovation, the care, and the deep legacy of resilience. Each episode is both a testimony and an offering, an act of preservation for those who came before, and a guide for those still walking this path today. By listening, you are helping to ensure that these stories are not lost but held, celebrated, and passed forward. So take a breath, settle in, and join us as we honor the past, uplift the present, and reimagine the future of education together. All right, folks, welcome back to the Exit Interview, a podcast for Black educators. It's me, your host, Dr. Asia. And of course, I know I say this every time. You all are used to me saying this, but more amazing guests. Today, I have Dr. Franita Ware on. We connected on LinkedIn and we see each other in person. We've been together in community because we were both in the Denver area. And we've been chopping it up for a while. And then one day I said, I think it's time for you to be in the podcast. And she said, I've been waiting for you to ask me. And so we are finally here. And I think, you know what, you all have seen her on our YouTube channel because we had a couple conversations a while back where she and I were just recording and talking. So now she's here to officially tell her story. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dr. Asia. You know, I'm humbled because all the amazing guests you have. And I'm honored because people get to see how we talk. It might get a little wild
Yes.
because we really vibe.
Yeah, we do. We do. And I said, we recorded that little clip a while back. It's just like, let's just push record on it. Let's just see what we talk about.
Because it was happening.
Yeah, it was. It was. So I'm excited to have you on the show. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself. Who are you? Anything that they should know?
So I am child of Mary Frances Ware. I am an educator. This is not my first career, and we'll talk about that. I am committed to this. This is my purpose on earth.
Yeah.
And so I get to enjoy the work that I do from that perspective as opposed to, oh, it's a job. I have education in this, so I'm supposed to do this. It's like, this is what I choose to do.
Yeah.
And with that comes a lot of joy. And when I go do the work that I do, people feel that joy. They talk about how they like my energy. And so it comes from an authentic place. So I get to be authentically me in the work that I do. And it's amazing.
I love that. And I love that you shouted out your mother. You're right, our first teacher for so many of us. I find that more and more folks are speaking about their parents, speaking about their grandparents, their ancestors, and just bring them into space because it's so important to acknowledge unofficial teachers or official teachers in that way. Yeah. So thank you for that. So let's go ahead and get started. First question, what was your journey into education? How did you know that education was for you?
So very non-conventional. Education is my third career. I was invited into education. So in the sixth grade, my sixth grade teacher, Miss Henson at the time, had taught my brother, who's a few years older than me, and he had the absolute crush on her. So I knew about her already. And because I lived in a community where teachers stayed in the community and taught, I didn't go to a school where teachers were just coming in and out of the door. I knew if this teacher knew my mother. And so years later, when I had moved back to Atlanta and I was working in commercial art and my client had not paid me on Friday. And he said, "Are you coming back?" And I said, "No, that's volunteering."
Right.
And so that weekend, let's not get started.
No, let's not.
But that weekend, my sixth grade teacher, who was a family friend, who was now a principal of a school, asked me what I was doing. And I said, actually nothing. Then she said, come sub for me. And so I went to go sub for her in Atlanta Public Schools. The first week I was there with kindergartners and they ate me up. I didn't know what I was
Yeah, of
doing.
course. Kindergartners can be
They,
treacherous. Yeah, they like to gang up on folks. Yeah.
they were like Pac-Man on me. And after the first day, she was like, really? You're going to let kindergartners run over you? And it's actually in my book too. And so I got into it. And by the end of the week, I knew that was something I wanted to do. And I literally went from being a substitute teacher to a college professor working on my doctorate within 10 years.
Oh, wow.
The doors opened for me. That was in February. By summer, I decided, okay, I got to go get certified. I worked at a summer camp with another Black woman educator. Everybody was like, see if you really want to do this.
Sure.
So I worked at the summer. That was great. Clark Atlanta University had scholarship money for people entering the field or needing to get credentials. I was there at the right time, at the right place, did that, started working on my master's, continued to work as a substitute to a paraprofessional, then got into a first grade classroom. Literally in 10 years' time, like one day I had to think about it, went from a substitute teacher to a college professor teaching at Spelman College as I was finishing my doctorate. So it was where I was supposed to be. The doors opened so fast, I had to slow down. I had to stop taking so many job offers because it looked like I was job hopping. I was like, you need to stay here. So I stayed at Spelman for 8 years. And then from there, went into school administration, moved to Denver to do school administration, became a graduate school professor here as an adjunct at DU. It's been quite the journey, but I love the work. I love my research. I love that I get to continue to do it. I love that I've written a book about it now. And so that fuels my professional development. I always wanted to do professional development with teachers in schools. I loved teaching, don't get me wrong. But I also wanted to be able to connect with teachers in real time. And so now I do work with teachers in real time.
So let me ask you a question. You started as a substitute teacher and, like you said, became a paraprofessional, then a classroom educator. Did you find that when you became a classroom teacher, because you had the experience of both the sub and the paraprofessional, that it helped, even though you were in your very early stages of teaching in a traditional classroom, that experience helped you with the families,
Yes.
community, with the students?
Yes.
Can you talk more about that?
Yes. Being a substitute teacher, you have to get good fast.
Yeah.
So I learned how to get good fast. I also learned that elementary was my age. I did middle school and I thought, he's not my
Yeah, and they're not for everybody.
everybody has their grade
Mhm.
level. And I say that, some people are high school, some people are middle, some people are elementary. I'm elementary and college or grad. I'm that in between, that's somebody else's mission. And so, yes, definitely having some life experiences because I was older. I was not a 21 years old, fresh coming out of
Well,
college.
how old were you when you started as a
I was
sub?
30. I was like
Oh,
30.
okay.
Yeah. So being a sub made me get good real fast. And you had to come in with those strategies to let them know you're in charge like right away. And I didn't want to be the dragon lady all day long. And so I wanted my own classrooms so I could build the relationships and we could just do the work and we could just enjoy education as opposed to, substitutes. You have to come in being in charge. As a paraprofessional, I was in a school where I had worked as a sub and now I was a paraprofessional. Again, my sixth grade teacher, who's now a principal, then hired me as a as a paraprofessional. And so I knew the school, I knew the students, and so it was easier. The relationships were there. I had developed relationships with my colleagues, and so I could watch them and see things they did and learn from them. And so it was really a very easy transition because I was in a community of educators who supported me and encouraged me. I was being encouraged, of course, by the principal. It was easy, but I had maturity on my side too.
Sure. Sure. And there's something to be said about, like you said earlier, you were in a school where the community was in the school, where the teachers lived in the community. You knew the principal, your brother had like this long standing relationship.
Yes.
And I don't
Yeah.
know, as you were talking, I was thinking about, did I ever see my teachers in community? And I did. And this is Detroit Public Schools, not here in Denver. I did see my teachers in community, and the teachers that my sister had, I wanted, and vice versa. And so I could see how it could make a difference on the teacher side because it definitely made a difference on the student side. So when you were at the school teaching first grade, how long was it before you realized that you wanted to go back and get your master's?
Well, so I was working on my master's. I had always planned to get a doctorate. In the 11th grade, I had a school counselor, and we were talking about the work that he did and, the type of education you needed for it. And I learned then a psychiatrist needs a medical degree, a psychologist needs a PhD. And I was like, I can do that. Now, I didn't know anybody with a PhD, but I felt empowered
Yeah.
in the 11th grade to believe, like, okay, that's what we're going to do. And so I had an undergrad degree in psychology, which also supported education. A lot of my classes for my psychology degree counted toward my credentials in
Oh,
Atlanta.
okay.
I mean, it was like I found my space finally. And I hadn't gotten into graduate school in psychology. And so when all of that started happening, I was like, oh, I'm getting a PhD. So I started working on my master's immediately. And I took a year off between my master's and my PhD because my brain needed a break. And I also just needed to teach and not go to school
Yeah, that's a
for a year.
lot. It's a
It
lot.
was a lot. I was just determined, and I had so much encouragement, and I was treated like, "Yes, honey, this is where you're supposed to be." And so the master's led into the kinda dual of master's and credentials because I still had to do some things for credentials that were not part of the master's. Took the year off. I attended a HBCU. I attended Clark Atlanta University. As I was finishing my master's, my main professor was like, "So where are you going to get the PhD?" And I said, "Really, I'd like to go to Emory." And he was like, "Oh, my best friend's wife teaches there. Let me introduce you."
Nice.
And that's how I met Dr. Jacqueline Jordan Irvine. And, the rest is history. I was admitted into Emory. She had funding to do a program called Cultures. And that's where she was doing professional development model. Teachers participated, they were paid. She taught the importance of making sure teachers are paid for their work and their time. And so in that, like I said, the doors just open. I was just so nurtured and so brought into the profession in a way I had not experienced anyplace else professionally.
Yeah. And there's something to be said about this network of people that we are around, right? And I know sometimes we say the word network, people think like very staunch suits and business, but it can be all types of relationships. We just had someone on, Candace Renee Person, and we had Dr. Lance Bennett on, and they both talked about someone saying, "Hey, I think you should blah, blah, blah," or "Let me introduce you to blah, blah, blah," or "You might want to consider this, that, or the other." And there's something to be said about these little nudges that if we follow them, if we follow up, if we say yes, can take us on a journey that we would have never gone on otherwise. So I always love to hear and to stop and acknowledge that when people say, "Let me introduce you to this person," or, like the principal just calling you right after you decided, "I'm not working for free." And then we're down the road here in Denver and we wouldn't have been here had you said, "I can't be a sub. Those kids, blah, 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 blah." So that,
Or after the first day, say, "Oh, no, I can't do
yeah,
that.
the
I
kindergartners
think
ate
about
me
something
up.
else to do." Take because they ate me up.
Yeah. I love to hear that. So you got your PhD at Emory. So let me ask a different question. This whole time that you're transitioning from one space to another, what was the conversation like in your household with your family, with your mom? And you tell her, "I'm going to be a teacher." What was that like? Because like you say, you're 30 at this point, and so that's not a simple, like, quick, "I'm 21" or whatever. What was that conversation?
So here's the prime example. It's interesting you ask that. My friends back here in Denver, I have extended family here. When I told them I was going to be a teacher, they were like, "Really? What brought that about?" Because I had never been a child kind of
Yeah,
person.
okay.
I'm the youngest in my family. I never even babysat.
Okay, you were
Like
being
I was not,
babysat.
yeah, that was it. And so I never had experiences with children. I was a commercial artist before that. Came from Atlanta. I enjoyed life. That wasn't on the radar at all. And so everyone was like, "Really? Okay." So,
Y'all like, "Please be happy
but
for me." We're happy.
yeah, then, okay, well, yeah, this works out. And so it was after I got into it, and I mean, like, I was hustling. I was doing a master's and credentials classes. I was subbing, a paraprofessional. Fortunately, my principal understood when I just had to get papers done. So I could take a couple days off, especially when I was working as a sub, I definitely could like just not be available that weekend and get work done. But I was hustling. I wanted to do this. I was even going to a different school than Clark AU for some of my credential classes just to get them done because I wanted to get in a classroom. And I kept saying, I don't want to be the dragon lady anymore. I want to come in and just love kids and have fun and just, I don't want to have to like be in control. I wanted to just be relaxed. And so I was working really hard to get all the things I needed to get done so I could get into my own classroom.
Yeah. And when you got there, was it what you thought it was going to be?
It was not in Atlanta public schools. And so the children were different. And so I had to make that adjustment, but it was amazing. All my commercial art background, we had amazing art projects.
Oh, I bet.
Oh, I had a dragon that went the length of the ceiling. We had a tree in the hallway that went up the wall and leaves were hanging down. And there were 100 leaves because I taught my students how to count to 100. And they even told me I had to take the tree down because it was setting off the fire
I was
alarm.
going to say, we could barely put anything on the ceiling when I was teaching because then the fire department was like, nothing on the ceiling.
Yes, instead of things hanging, because they literally were hanging, attached everything to the walls because I just couldn't take the tree down. I mean, the students were so engaged and so we had so much fun. And my students knew that they had a part of me that no one else got. They would see how I interact with the other adults in the building and other people would come to the classroom, but they knew when I closed the door and I was teaching with them, they saw a part of me no one else saw, and they knew they had a part of me that nobody else had. And so the relationship we had was amazing. And I hadn't gone to do my doctoral studies yet where I was learning about culturally responsive education. And so there were things I didn't know yet, but there were things I knew intuitively. My research on warm demander teachers, like Black teachers know things intuitively. And I had been taught by Black teachers. Most of my school experiences in Atlanta, except for about 3 years, was in the Black community with Black teachers. And so I knew things intuitively about teaching that just kind of like woke up in the moment. And so it was an amazing experience, even though all the students didn't look like.
Sure. And I think, the first thing I'm thinking about you talking is all the people that I've interviewed, I just imagine just having 12 of you all as my classroom teachers across K-12 or 13, however many, I don't know, how amazing education I would have received or lots of kids would have received. That's the first thing. And the second thing is we've had a lot of conversation, you and I, about Black teachers just knowing. And I told you that I had an assistant principal one day ask me, I want you to teach other teachers. He didn't say warm demander because he didn't have the language, but
he knew it was
yeah,
that magic.
And you and I talked about in the very beginning, neither one of us knew how to teach that. Like, I don't know. I was taught by Black teachers in my own DPS in Detroit Public School. I'm teaching how I was taught, right? And we'll get into later on, like the warm demander teacher, your book and what you've come to know and your professional development. But I really think that's really interesting that you're saying that. So you finish your PhD, you don't go back to teaching in a K-12 space. And so where do you go from there?
So I was working on my doctorate when I got hired at Emory. I was like toward the end, but I was still working on my doctorate when I got hired at Spelman. And so I literally finished my doctorate while I was teaching my students at Spelman.
Oh, wow.
And I will never forget this one student when I had my hearing. Like, they would come to my office and we were talking all those things. And I was saying something about I finished it. She was like, wait a minute. Because I was Professor Ware before that. And she was like, wait a minute. You're done? You're Dr. Ware? And I was like, yeah, I'm done. She said, but you're not making a big enough deal about it. Something she said. and I was still close to the student too. Please know we still stay in contact. I have students I'm still in contact
I love
with.
it.
And I want you to know when I went back to class the next time, I was Dr. Ware. I guess she got the word out. I never had to say, now call me. They did it. So it's that kind of thing. Like, I can't remember what she said, but in other words, you're not making a big enough deal about this. You're done now. In other words, we've been on this road with you. I would talk about my papers. I would talk about what I was writing and my ideas. They helped critique warm demander teachers. Like, they were part of the process with me. And so when I achieved, they called me Dr. Ware. I didn't tell them they had to start now calling me Dr. Ware.
I love that. So tell us about, we've had a couple folks that were students at Spelman on the podcast, but never a professor. So would love to hear. I know there are people in K-12 who desire to teach in higher education, and they're going back to school to get their PhD, their ED, their PsyD, And I know the times are different. Employment is looking much different than it did, even 10 years ago. But tell us about that experience, how you applied, how you get like all these pieces, how long you were there, what you learned, what you loved about it, what was challenging. We want to know all of that.
Okay. It was an opportunity that came to me because my sister-in-law had attended Spelman. She joked about I was being a placeholder for her until she was ready to come. But she lived in Delaware.
The
She
prospect was
was
low.
back.
It was not happening.
But she had this dream about I'll just be there until she's ready to come back. And she got her doctorate before me. So she was the first Dr. Ware. So I was always almost Dr. Ware with her as I was going through the process. Then I became Dr. Ware. So we're both Dr. Ware.
Yes.
So my sister-in-law, Dr. Ware, had attended Spelman, knew people there, told me about the opportunity. I had stopped going to school full time because I just needed something else to do in my brain. Started teaching fifth grade. When the opportunity came up, my principal, who was getting her doctorate at Emory too, she was like, you need to go do that because you'll have more time to write. She's right. I did not have time to write teaching fifth grade,
Yeah.
5 days a week. We thought we could kind of work it out. She knew I was writing. And in fact, she wrote a recommendation for me to go to Spelman.
Okay.
She said, you need more time to write. It was an amazing experience because even though I got my master's at Clark AU, I didn't have an undergrad HBCU experience. I felt very honored and humbled to be there. The students were amazing. Like I said, I have students who still keep in touch with me, and that's just wonderful to me. I was there at a time that it was good to be an educator. I had never planned to be a professor. In fact, as I was working on my PhD, I thought I wanted to work at a foundation to direct money to the right community. That was like my dream. And my professor used to talk about you need the right people at the table. So I was like, okay, I'll be that person at the table that says, let me tell you why this project for Black students is for foundation money to pay for the program that she was running. So I thought, oh, foundations. Okay, that's a venue that I might be interested in. But Spelman was a wonderful experience. I loved it. I loved my students. It was challenging. No doubt about it. It was challenging. And toward the end of that time, I was really missing children every day. And even though I would go and observe my students when they were student teaching and everything, and I would hear about it, I miss seeing children. And so I transitioned from there. I had a client who then I became an assistant principal at a charter school. And so
In Atlanta.
in the Atlanta area. And so it was like back to seeing children again. That was the only thing. I miss seeing children and feeling like I was having a direct connection. I had an amazing experience with my students. I used to tell them, look, you'll be the culturally responsive consultant in your building. You'll be the one who knows it. You'll be able to teach them how to do it. They were very much involved in the warm demand or development of my ideas. Like I said, I still hear from students, but I miss seeing children. I wanted to work with teachers directly in schools. So it wasn't this, I told you in college, now will you go do it when you teach, that it'll be the direct connection of, we're doing professional development on Wednesday afternoon, Thursday morning, you're taking the ideas and you're running
Yeah,
with it.
sure.
So that's how that transition happened. I missed children. Okay, from not babysitting to missing
Yeah, you're a
children.
long way off. I mean, yeah, it's interesting because so many folks would assume that U.S. Spelman was like the cake. It was, that's it. You retire. It's homecoming. You retire for, and especially the way, shout out to Stacey Brandon, how it's been described to me, how Spelman is. I can't, from this side, imagine packing up and saying, like, let's go and do something else. But I love that you're saying that. We do get to a place, I think, especially this has been the tension in higher education, is that folks who are teaching higher ed to pre-service educators or educators have been long away from students, long away from children and community, and then they no longer know what's happening right now.
And that was part of it. I didn't want to be just an academic. I didn't want to have ideas that weren't fresh, that weren't connected to the day to day. I didn't want to be so far removed that my ideas were just ideas. I wanted to be able to say, and this is what happens, and this is how we solve this problem, and this is how it worked out. So that was a vibrant, amazing experience. And then when I went to the charter school, that was a new, vibrant, amazing experience. And again, in all those experiences, I'm with Black educators. And so I always had this feeling of home. I always had this feeling of people appreciating me for my authenticity. It's very different than Denver, but it fed me in the way I needed to be fed. And again, remember, I'm transitioning into this career, had never planned to be an educator. And so finding places where I felt at home and valued and welcomed were critical for me and where I was at that point in my life.
And speaking of this whole time you're in Atlanta, and I probably am fast forwarding a little bit, but how did you get to Denver? Because Denver is not close to Atlanta. And I know that when I started teaching, I don't have a context of what you're talking about, but in 2006, I know that the district that I worked in, there was just like this huge push to get folks specifically from Atlanta, from HBCUs, from like the South and some of the East Coast to come out here. That wasn't why I came. I came because I needed a job. We just had my husband and I used to have a pick Colorado. But like, how did you end up here?
After college, so I left Atlanta.
Which college? Because
So I attended Bluffton College in Bluffton, Ohio,
okay.
because growing up in Atlanta, it was a lot of fun. Remember in the 11th grade that I was getting a PhD. And so I knew I needed to go someplace quiet where I would focus and get the GPA to go to grad school.
I love that you thought like that at the 11th grade. Listen.
Let me tell you, I didn't make a lot of good decisions in 11th grade. I made bad.
I mean, that's brilliant because some people are like, Atlanta? Oh, yeah, I'm going down there. I'm going to parties. And you were like opposite.
But remember, I grew up in Atlanta.
Used to it.
Spelman was a treat.
Yeah.
So, I was used to being dominant culture. I was used to all of that. I was used to being valued and respected. I was used to navigating spaces where I was not dominant culture and where I was dominant culture. And so I had a very healthy sense of all that. And, a good friend now that I tell her, your son doesn't necessarily need to go to Morehouse. He grew up in Atlanta. You're an educator. You're doing all these things. He has that lived experience. So I had the lived experience where I could go other places. And so I picked a place and I had applied to all the other places, on the East Coast where you'd be prestigious to go. But this was a place I needed to go because I needed the GPA and I needed as few distractions as possible to get the GPA. And so I did. I got the GPA for grad school, moved out here after college, had thought I was going to go to CU Boulder, had applied to CU Boulder for their master's and PhD program in psychology. Thought I would just reapply and came here, my 20s. I was like, oh, wait a minute. This is fun. So made lifelong friends and extended family here and then moved back to Atlanta. And that's how I got into education.
Okay, gotcha. Oh, yeah, because you had your first career.
Yeah, I was in public administration. I'm in my 20s. I'm working in city government.
She had the heels and the suit.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And the heels and the suits. I'm from Atlanta, so I brought all that here.
And can we just have a side note here, folks, for a second? Folks in Colorado can't dress. I said it. Folks in Detroit, Chicago, Atlanta, put on clothes.
Dressing is a thing.
It's a thing. Here, you can be at a wedding, people are wearing jeans. So I can only imagine. And folks who are listening to this on Spotify, Dr. Franita got her earrings on. She did not come to play, y'all. She got on the blouse. Okay,
It's a dress.
A dress. I'm talking mess, but I got on a sweatshirt. And she got me wanting to run back to my room and get myself together. But yeah, so you made a circle back here then.
I made a circle back. I decided to come back here. Again, I had these extended friendships. My mother had passed. I have brothers that are there. But it was like, okay, so where am I going to land? Where do I really want? And I never thought, even living here, people are like, you don't move back? I'm like, I live near the airport. I don't need to move. So I like air travel.
Yeah.
So this is home, but I will always do a lot of traveling. And I go to Atlanta regularly. Before COVID, I would go to Atlanta on the weekend and get my hair done.
Okay. That's a real thing too, because finding someone to do your hair, it's better now. It's been a journey. Yeah.
It's much better now. I have an amazing person now, but even she talks about how she didn't do natural hair.
Not a lot of people doing natural hair is.
Yeah. I would say natural hair and they'd be like, press.
Right away. Press. Flat iron.
No, natural hair. This is my hair right here. So that's how that big circle came about.
Every voice on the exit interview carries wisdom, resilience, and the reminder that Black educators deserve more than survival. They deserve to thrive. At Lions Educational Consulting, we create the spaces where that wisdom lives on in practice. For individual Black educators, our workshops offer room to breathe, to pause, and to rediscover purpose. For schools and districts, our consulting opens pathways to build equity-centered environments that honor Black educators and ensure they are seen, valued, and supported. These conversations don't stop at the end of the podcast episode. They ripple outward into classrooms, into leadership decisions, and into communities that benefit when Black educators are well. You're already a part of this story just by listening. If you're ready to take the next step, whether as a Black educator seeking wellness or as a leader reimagining your school's future, we'd love to walk with you. Connect with Lions Educational Consulting by connecting with me, Dr. Asia, on LinkedIn, or join me on Instagram. Together, let's transform stories into sustainable change. Now let's get back to the interview. So tell us about, you were also in education here. So I'm interested, because we're still not at the part where you've written a book. So we want to know, when you got here, what did you do? Because now we've got beat up by the kindergartners. We have first grade, we're fifth grade, we're professor, we're administrator. What did you do when you got here?
I came here to be a principal of a public school.
Okay.
And I did not know that the school had a history of challenges with Black educators.
Okay.
And in fact, there was a report that was written by Dr. Sharon Bailey, who is now an ancestor, who wrote about it extensively. And until she wrote that report, I didn't realize that that was the experience I had. So I came here, I had completed my doctorate. I had been doing professional development. So I came here. And in fact, I said in the interview, this is what I want to do. So I came here and I was training my teachers on how to be warm demander. And they were like, oh, no, honey, no, we're not doing that. And so within 2 years, I was out of that school. And I almost forgot about this. So the same year that I was no longer a principal at that school, Lisa Delpit published her book, Multiplication is for White People. And in that book, she doesn't just cite me. I had an article out at that point that was published in 2006. She pulls quotes from the article. She uses my whole name, not just the where and the date. Franita Ware says these things.
And did you know?
An educator gave me the book. I did not open the book. I went to Vail that Labor Day weekend. I used to go to the Jazz Fest, went to Vail. A person I knew had the book. They texted me. They were like, you're in this book. So I was ready to leave Vail. I was like, wait, I'm in Lisa Delpit's book?
Yeah.
And so when I got home, and that validated me, it was like, you know what? Lisa Delpit thinks your work is valuable. And it also let me know, okay, you need to write a book. I didn't know what. Okay, warm demanders. Okay, I know that. Then I had the opportunity to do professional development.
In the same district?
In the same district.
It's interesting you talk about, you were at that school for 2 years and just like constant push out of Black principals, Black administrators. I'm pausing for a second because, again, you're here. This whole time you're in Atlanta, it is welcoming, it is supporting, it's this and this. And
notice how you caught all that?
I mean, this is episode so on and so forth. And the doctorate on racial benefits. Like, listen, and I want to pause on that because, yeah, you're a long way from home here. And what support looks like from other Black people in education is different here for a lot of us. How administration, how districts support Black women is really different. And I do want to pause and say, if you're able, if you feel like it, can you tell us, like, towards the end of that second year, what was that story? Like, was that a decision that you had to make? Or was that a decision made by someone else? How did that go, if you don't mind sharing?
It was absolute trauma. I was hot in Atlanta. And I remember thinking, so what happened? I used to be hot. Like, I must be the worst person in the world. And so that lived with me for a little while. It was like, oh, I must be awful. Until I was around a little bit more and I saw other Black educators removed from the principalship. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. This isn't quite just me. And please, let's be very clear. I was not perfect.
Sure.
Yeah, some of this is me for sure. But had I known all that, I would have been like, I'm hot. I'll stay in Atlanta. I'll come out here for Christmas and see my extended family. I don't have to live here again. I can stay in Atlanta where it's like, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was traumatic for me. I definitely had to grow and heal from that. Lisa Delp's book helped a lot. And then when I started doing professional development, which was what I always wanted to do, a few years later, I met Zaretta Hammonds. So Zaretta Hammonds came to the school district and I met her. And she was talking about warm demander teachers in her talk. And so I was snapping in the back. And some of the people I knew, they were like, who is that snapping? I was like, Franita, because they knew my work. And so I talked to her and she said to me, you need to write a book. She said, people have built their work off of your work. You need to write a book.
Oh.
And then right after that, I started to do some extended professional development with the school. And we started with what ended up being the process of the book. And at the end of the year, I said, I've got the book now. And it took me a little while later to realize, had I not come to Denver, I would not have had the book.
Of course.
Because I would not have known how to take warm demander teachers to a broader audience. And so it all makes sense, but it was a journey there for me.
Yeah, and I don't know how many Black women in education come out of this unscathed. I don't know how many of us, even if we retired as, it was fine at the end, there's always a big something in the middle somewhere where it causes us to stand back and say, like, wait a minute, am I in the right spot? Are people right about me? Am I right about myself? Was everybody else who said out
All of that.
so that was good and that was great? Were they lying? Why can't I do it here and I can do it there? I think that we all kind of pause
All of that.
and say, like, let me evaluate myself. And that's really hard because, in education, our validation does come from other people. It comes from the student scores. It comes from the parents, little birthday cards and all the things. And so because a lot of us, our feelings about ourselves and education come from other people, it can also be torn apart by other people at the same time, right? And I'm sure that's the same in lots of careers. Us working with students so much who are so appreciative, it can really give us, I don't want to say a false sense because that's not fair, but a sense of like, I'm doing great. And then that one or two people or multiple folks or whatever try to tear us down. It does take all the great things we've done sometimes and say, wait a minute, did I miss something? Right. So, yeah, that's something I wanted to kind of pause and think about. And the professional development is happening at the same time that you're writing your book.
No, I was saying I got to write a book. I got to write a
Sure.
book, but I didn't know what to write. And really, what made that all work and get me past all that trauma was I created a training titled Radical Self-Carea. I thought I had a stroke. It was a couple years later after I had left the principalship. And I had a job where I didn't work summers. And that summer, I literally hit the wall. I was like, okay, you got to go to the doctor. This is serious. You are not okay. And because I am the nerd that I am, I wrote a training. So as I was recovering, I wrote a training. And then a client hired me to do some consulting work with their after school program, their leads. And I said, well, I got this new thing I'm working on. They're like, yeah, do that. Knock yourself out. And so when I did Radical Self-Carea the first time, I was amazed at the response. I thought what I had experienced, the stress, the brain fog, the lack of sleep, like that whole list, I thought it was personal. I thought it would be nice for them. But they were like, oh, that list? Yeah, all of that. And so that started it. And it's interesting now because I'm on the board of that after school program now. So that was part of my healing. And I also learned what I needed to heal. And then so the school that I worked with for that year, we started with Radical Self-Carea. And so it is in the process of helping them heal that I continue to heal. And by the end of the year, I could see the experiences I had and how they contribute to my wellness and to the creation of the book.
So Dr. Franita, I want to pause. You real good at like going past these with a single sentence. And she said, and when I had a stroke, and that's when I decided to do professional development. We got to back up a little bit. So this is,
okay, I thought I had a stroke. It wasn't a real stroke.
But to even think that like what's happening. And I think you and I, when we have our little kiki sessions and we chit chat and connect, that's one thing that you and I have talked about is this connection between like racial battle fatigue, the experiences of racism related stress, first of all, how that impacts our bodies through racial battle fatigue. And then this need for radical self-care is like how our work connects because there are folks who have strokes, think they're having strokes, having panic attacks, things like that because of racialized experiences. And of course, sometimes they come out on the other side and they write a professional development and sometimes they don't.
They don't.
Yeah, they don't. And so you and I have talked about that so many, like in our hangout time, about the ways that we have to take care of ourselves. And we don't want to get to this point
No.
where we're on WebMD trying to figure out like,
No.
what's happening.
No.
And I'm glad you didn't have a stroke. In your healing, that you were like, wait a minute, I have to take care of myself. And then how do I spread like the metaphorical gospel about self-care? And I'm going to speak specifically to Black women and about Black women. How many Black women believe that self-care is possible, let alone radical self-care? And so I want you to talk about like radical self-care for a little bit, because when I hold professional development, or no, that's not true. I do not hold professional developments. When I hold rest shops in community,
Yeah. Your work is so
thank
powerful.
you. I always hear a lot of women who come to the rest shops because a lot of people, it's just mostly women. I don't have time. I feel guilty when I rest. I haven't experienced a hardship, so why should I rest? Resting is expensive. People are depending on me. I want to pause right here and just sit in this for a second. And can you talk about that time when you're writing? And like you said, how it was healing for you as it was healing for others.
And I started teaching radical self-care as a prevention to other people, not hitting the wall like I did.
Yeah.
Like I was living on 5 hours of sleep for years. Thought that was normal. Would have anxiety dreams I don't even want to go into details about. What really caught my attention was one time, you walk in a room, you're like, what did I come here to get? And you're like, oh yeah. This time I was like, why am I in this room? And I was like, oh, this is getting to be serious now. Like I was just exhausted. I was just fatigued. But I wrote it because I wanted to prevent other people from having to hit that. And I must have known some kind of way intuitively that it would be beneficial for educators. And specifically, you are right in terms of Black educators and Latina educators too. I have to get them past, self-care.
For sure.
Self-care is not selfish.
Yeah.
And I think I've seen you have that somewhere, but really get them to understand, no, like for real,
For real.
you have to do this. And then as I continue to do the work, because I wrote that in 2016. So, I've continued to read and everything. And when I start learning about neuroplasticity, and I became like the brain health nerd, like, don't get me started. And now I tell people, I can teach you how to rewire your brain. And so I've learned to teach people to do radical self-care. You do that one small step consistently, and in time your brain heals and the neuroplasticity will kick in and say, well, you know what? We could go walking. And I tell people that I say, your brain will tell you instead of like, oh no, we don't have time to walk. I'll be like, we could go for 10 minutes. And so you now have this internal cheerleader as opposed to internal critic or that voice saying, I can't do that. That's selfish. My family needs me. But the number of women and Black women who treat it like, that's cute.
Yeah.
That's real cute. I can't do it, but I'm glad for you.
Yeah.
That's cute.
So Stacey, who I just talked to you about, we started Podcast and Pause and Unbook Love for Black educators. And we were building that. And so we're trying to get the word out. And this episode will probably drop in October 2025. So this Podcast and Pause, when you hear it again, it may be out in the community where we're open for another session. But if we're building our first set of sessions, Stacey's out telling all her friends, she's a Delta, she has all these connections. I mean, she's telling everyone because it's on Zooms. Anybody can join. And she and I were like brainstorming one day. And she said, you know what? I don't think that people really want to heal. She said, this is an opportunity. And they talk about, come or call me or text, or we'll have conversations and they'll complain and complain. And then when she's saying people, she's saying the Black women that she's talking to, she said, I don't think they really want to heal, because here it is, these sessions, very accessible, and they're just not even thinking about it. It's like, okay, thank you, I'll think about it. And so I think about that a lot.
I do too.
Where it's like you said, oh, that's cute, or that's for someone else, or I know how to, I have good boundaries. And it's beyond that. It's beyond that.
And one of the things I ask now, are you willing? Like I asked that in my book, in professional development about teachers becoming more demanders, and radical self-care too. Are you willing? And what are you willing to do? Because You've got to get to where people make that commitment to do it. And again, I'm teaching this one small step most days, not even if it's not perfect and you don't do it every day. The people have to be willing to say, you know what? I'm going to read just one more cup of
That's
water,
right.
just one more. And with the neuroplasticity, that starts the progression. But people have to be willing. And it breaks my heart when I feel like people are so comfortable with not being okay that that's a better choice than taking a chance on trying something new and the possible transformation. Because when you
Mm-hmm.
do it for yourself, it's not like, okay, so I'm going to drink the water, it is transformation, then I'll do this. Like this is an internal process. It's not this external thing. And so whatever you do for your healing is for your transformation. And the more you do it consistently, it expands the type of transformation you experience. But it has to start with you and that. What are you willing to do?
Yeah. I wonder how many of us in education are really comfortable with complaining because everyone's doing it. Everyone's standing around the teacher's lounge.
It's a culture.
The culture of complaining.
Ooh, ooh. Okay, write that
I
down.
got you, girl.
Every time we talk, we're like, write that down.
Yeah. I really believe that educators, because so many of us are complaining about, I can't do this, that it's just like, if I choose to go in the other direction and take care of myself, then I won't have anyone to talk to. Because when I'm not drinking enough water, not taking off sub planes, I can complain about the sub, not having a sub. I can complain about the pay. But if I step back in and choose self and no one else is going in that direction, now what?
It's like gossiping. Who will I be friends
That's
with?
exactly right.
It's like that culture of gossiping. Who will I be friends with if I'm not part of the gossip?
Yeah.
And so that's why I work with schools and I've turned into action research. I have a school I'm working with now, it's an action research project, because the school that I worked with that first year, they made it a part of the school culture. They kept it going when I wasn't there. When the principal met with people, when they did their observations, like they talked about self-care. They talked about gratitude. They talked about the things I taught. And so it became part of the school culture and they saw an improvement in school culture. But you're right. If I decide to be healthy, then when there's donuts in, in the teacher's lounge, and I say, let me get a glass of water. I don't want a donut today. It's like you're saying, I'm not a part of your community or I'm better than you because I'm choosing not to have a donut now. It's really like, no, I'm just choosing not to have a donut.
Yeah.
Like I would choose not to have a hamburger. I'm just choosing not to have. We're still good. I just don't want to eat that. But it's like, who will you talk to? Ooh, so you have to get your friends well too.
So this is the thing that's really important. When you talked about self-care, I think about community care and getting your friends well. And what if they don't want to go along? What do you do then, right? And we have to have those conversations with ourselves in and outside of the school building. A lot of us who are 10 years, 20 years in the same building or in the same district, we can get really cliquish and all of our friends are in education and that's all we know. And so, yeah, what happens then when nobody wants to go with you and you have to go by yourself?
Think about other situations, even if it's not the cliquishness of school. You're friends with people. This is what we do on the weekends. I decide I don't want to do that
Yes.
anymore.
Yeah. This is a whole different podcast topic. We are, as always, down the road from where we started from. I want to put a pin in this and I want us to come back to and have another conversation about this particular topic. And I'm not going to forget, and you're not going to forget, we will come back and have a conversation about radical self-care and what you've seen in community and what I've seen, because I think it's really, really important. I do want to continue our conversation. You are no longer teaching in a school district, but you're supporting school districts. Tell us about what was it that helped you decide that it was time to still support students, still support educators, but not in the same way?
So the opportunity came where the district had one of multiple, like every 3 years layoffs. And I had navigated all the other ones. And this time I said no. In fact, I was pressured to apply for another job. I was pressured. Like I even went to emergent care one weekend because I felt so much pressure. I thought I was having a heart attack. To me, that was my sign. It's like, honey, I don't know what else you need to see. Like, it's time to go. And so I jokingly said that I wanted to bet on me. I said, I'm a bet on Black. And so decided to take the chance on investing in me, investing in my business to be full-time because I did consultant discreetly you know,
Sure.
for
Sure.
years. But this time I was like, okay, I'm going to make this a business. I'm going to write this book. I'm going to finally get this book done. And I decided to bet on me.
Yeah.
And here we are 3 years later. The book is done. I have a business. As entrepreneur, it's work
It
to
is.
maintain your own business. It's not like if you just show up, you'll get a check. It's not like having a job. It is you and you maintaining it and you all of that. So I've been doing that and it's been amazing.
Yeah. Tell us about your book.
So the baby, this is the book, Warm Demander Teachers. It comes out of the dissertation, the 2006 article that was published and is still being cited. When I was looking up research to support my book, I would find articles and I would read them and I would go, oh, wait, I'm in here.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
look.
cool.
So I'm still being referenced. It was with the publisher I wanted, which is Corwin, which is also the publisher that Zaretta Hammonds is with. It was an experience. The other thing I didn't realize at the time, the 2006 article is also published by Corwin. So they could
Oh,
easily look up and see how much I was still being cited and, how popular that article was. Again, they were always very welcoming, very encouraging. Yes, we want to work with you. And so the book has been out not quite a year now, but it gives, the Red Hammonds told me one time, it's like a good business card.
yes.
So when I go to school, it's like, this is what I do. This is what we're going to build from. Radical Self-Care is the second chapter. The first chapter is the introduction. And so my sixth grade teacher and my mother and the community that I was a part of and how I was taught in my school years and the community, the most important part, the community. And so the second chapter is Radical Self-Care. And what I tell teachers is you have to get well first before you even think about being a warm demander teacher, because it is a journey. You have to get well
Yeah.
first. And in the time that I've been doing work with schools around the book, now I have lots of new ideas. One of the things I'm sharing with schools now is the complexity of warm demander teacher relationships. And I didn't know this before, but the warm demander teacher relationship first is with their self.
Yeah.
That's the radical self-care piece. They have to be well first. And so if all those other things we talked about hadn't happened, I wouldn't know that. I wouldn't have that for teachers. If I hadn't created Radical Self-Care and had been so popular, so many people took it. People took it multiple times. I stopped counting, even before I became in my own business, I stopped counting how many people took the workshop when it got to 2,000. I feel like we're there now. Like and it's significantly more than that. It can go anywhere. I've used it in other contexts. We're not with classroom teachers. And so that's the foundation of the work. You have to get well first. And so all the work I do with schools, we start with Radical Self-Care. And then we continue the work and go into the book study or the school culture, warm demander teachers, school culture, warm demander leaders. And so I teach it as an inclusive culture for everybody to be on the same page and everyone to be of support with each other. So there's 8 different interactions that warm demander teachers have in terms of relationships with students. And one of them is with their colleagues and knowing when to tap out,
Yeah.
knowing when to say, you know what, whatever it is. Remember we talked before about the whole going to the restroom thing?
Oh, yeah.
That came up in a conversation I had with school recently too. So I'm glad we had that conversation.
Yeah.
So I was able to be encouraging about that. But just knowing when you need to say, can you cover for me? I need to run to the restroom or I need to breathe or I've kind of hit the wall here. I need to just go for a walk and just some neurotransmitters going. So it has to be a community. So you know how we talk about we can be very cliquish in schools. We got to break those cliques at least professionally.
Yeah.
I need to be able to ask you to help me in a moment, whether we are in the same gossip group or not. And so in getting people well, the goal is also to heal the school community.
Yeah. I want to reference back this story. So that we were just talking about with the restroom, I have a virtual assistant named Alicia. Alicia was saying that she was dropping her son off at school on the first day of school or picking her son up. She's on the lawn and she's chatting with a professional that was at the school. And she was talking about how they had professional development week. And during professional development week, as a group, as a whole school, they were trying to figure out how to have more camaraderie amongst the staff. And so someone said that they should do a hydration challenge to make sure that people stay fully hydrated. And the administration said, well, if we do that, then that means that you all will need to have like relief to go to the bathroom, like someone has to watch your class. So we're not going to do that. And so Dr. Franita and I were talking about how we have to take care of ourselves in spite of, right? And we can't assume that anyone else, administration or otherwise, is going to be looking out for our health. I think you said or I said that if the school together came and brainstormed, they could have figured out a strategy to make it work. And so she and I, Dr. Fanita and I, spent about 15 minutes on that call just brainstorming all the ways that they could have,
How to solve it.
yeah, how to solve the problem. But there wasn't even the way that my VA was describing this story, there wasn't even time for them to come together and problem solve. It was just like a shut it down, which she did say that the parents said it impacted like the energy in the room, that it was shut down and then they moved on to something else. And so this idea of taking care of self and not assuming that other people, no matter how much you love them or love the community, are going to take care of yourself. You have to take care of yourself first.
So the beauty of that conversation, that next week I did Radical Self-Care with the school, the question of drinking water came up. And because we'd had that conversation and the principal was in there, I turned to the principal and I said, I bet that's a problem we can solve.
Yes.
I said that. So when I go back, I'm going back to see them later on this month because I don't want to step in like, this is what you need to do because we had already problem solved. Wanted to give them
We already figured the shit out. Yeah.
Yeah, we already got this figured out, but I'm going to give you a minute to figure it out. So that conversation, that comment ended with like the possibility of how we solve it as opposed to, we're not doing that.
Yes.
And the other thing I talked about is one of the things we were kidding about a lot at the school is the energy of October. And I'd parallel it to like riding up a roller coaster and like it's going up the hill. And I made the comment about, is that energy in any type of correlation to you've been back in school a few months now, all the hydration you did over the summer has now dropped. And so now your hydration is down, but the energy of the school is higher. How will we change the energy if people were hydrated? Will we flatten that curve a little bit of the stress of schools going into the winter months if people could, one, drink more water and keep their brains hydrated, and two, know they could count on somebody for a quick break. So when I go back, I'm going to say, so how we solve that? Because it's a conversation that needs to happen. And because of our conversation, I was able, I wasn't just like, I don't know. When the question came up, I looked at the person, I said, I bet that's something that can be solved.
I love that. Oh, then keep me updated. I want to know what happened.
Yes. Well, we talked about, we were going to talk about that some more.
Yeah.
So, but again, see how powerful our community is. When I go do my work, I'm better prepared. That's why we need community.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. My next question is, in the same conversation about radical self-care, for you, what does it mean to be well?
I am so grateful that I teach radical self-care and I teach it as much as I do. And I don't want it to get spell on me. So I continually read things and learn things and try things. Something I heard just the other day, and I'm going to share this in my trainings. I'm not preaching at people about radical self-care because they're not doing it right. I'm preaching for myself too. And so because I've got all these things in my head, stuff just kicks in. When that negative thought comes in, I know how to go, oh, no, you're not running the day. When I get up and I'm feeling like, oh, it's not a happy day, it's like, all right, what am I grateful for? Let's start that. And so, there's this automatic type of response that I have. I am absolutely human. I'm doing this work. I do this work every day. I am not perfect.
Yeah.
But it's not as long a delay in knowing, oh, what do I need to do now? And so I can catch myself faster. Sleep is my thing. Even now, I mean, I'm way past the 5 hours, thank goodness, but I still work on sleep and I call it movement, exercise, and radical self-care because it's got to be inclusive, because you're at the movement stage is like you and your sofa are really close and you need to break it with yourself. And I talk about that, like needing to break it with my sofa. We're good now, but we broke up. We don't spend as much time together as we used to. But I started with, if you were watching commercial television, when the commercial comes on, get up and put a load of laundry in the washer, get up and move. And to do that frequently, after a while, I found that I was paying less attention to television. So it had to be something I could like come in and out of the room and still pick up the plot. But that's how I broke over myself. So it's movement exercise. And in Denver, we got people like running marathons. out of boredom on weekend, but not everybody is running marathons in Denver.
Facts.
And so I had to make it accessible from that perspective. And so all the different things I know I do, like I'll enjoy food and I'll know, okay, that's enough. Let's stop that now. We're not going to eat bread every
Yeah.
day. And so I just know the things. But wellness for me, the clarity, the ability to be in environments where people want to challenge my ideas or my thoughts, or just the fact that I'm a Black woman talking with authority and how I'm not triggered by that, where before I was very much triggered by that. To me, that's the best example of being well. I can be in any context and not be triggered, continue to speak with authority because I am an authority.
Period. Yes.
But to do that like calmly with grace, where before I had to like come in like, now it's like, but I am, like, for real. To just be able to navigate all the things that are going on right now that could crush us, and to be able to stay well. It's intentional. It's something I have to work at, but I'm grateful I have it. I'm so grateful. I thought I had a stroke back then, and that I decided not to just go to a doctor and take a pill,
Yeah.
but to really work on it and share with other people and encourage other people and continue to read and continue to learn. I'm so grateful.
Always a teacher.
I know how to be well.
Yeah, always a teacher.
And I encourage other people to be well.
Yeah. Thank you. Last question. Is there a Black educator or educators that you would like to shout out?
Yes. She is with a school district in this area. I hired her as a kindergarten teacher. She is now an administrator in a school.
Oh, wow.
This is her second year. Her first year, I did something sweet for her. And if you ever talk to her, I'll let her tell you the story. They call her Miss O. Her name is Chi Oyewinye. Let me tell you, when I observed her teach kindergarten, those children were doing what I call culturally responsive inquiry in my book. They were leading the conversation. They were asking each other questions. She was the facilitator. She was stepping back, and I don't know what they were talking about, but the students kept the conversation going and asked each other questions and stated their point. And just, it blew me away. But when I first met her, we felt something. When I was at the job fair, we both were like, so she is amazing. She's absolutely amazing. And again, she has that intuitive, culturally nuanced way of doing the work. So yes, I would love it if you would talk to her.
Awesome. All right, Mrs. O, we're coming for you. All right. So folks, if you are interested in Dr. Franita's book, The Warm Demander, pull it up again for us. Warm Demander Teachers. You can find it online if you want to get your hands on it. We've already talked about Zaretta Hammond giving many props. Where can people find you if they want to reach out, maybe get you into their building or some books?
Yes.
Like, how can they get connected with you?
They can find me on my website. warmdemanderteachers.com is one of the pages on my website, and franitawarephd.com. And both places you can find me, and love to talk to everyone about the work that I do, because this is what I do. This is my joy in life. And supporting more schools and more teachers and more leadership that supports all of our students, that is inclusive to students, that teaches them to fly. Like, it's my purpose on earth. And so, yes, I am accessible and would love a conversation about how we take it to the next level. And then you and I have some more conversations.
Oh, we do.
Too. There's some things down the road for us. I don't know what it is, but there's something
Absolutely.
there.
All right, folks, you heard it here. Dr. Franita, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Of course. You all take care of yourselves. Drink your water. Get your exercise. Eat some fiber. Clean your glasses. Right? Breathe. Get some sleep.
Deeply.
Breathe deeply. Hug yourself. Love yourself. And we'll talk to you later. All right. Peace. Thank you for joining us for today's episode of The Exit Interview, a podcast for Black educators. Every story shared here is a reminder that our wellness matters and that thriving in education is possible when we create spaces of care and belonging. If today's conversation spoke to you, we'd love to keep in touch. You can sign up for our newsletter at exitinterviewpodcast.com or connect with me on LinkedIn to stay up to date on upcoming workshops, consulting opportunities, and ways we're transforming stories into solutions through Alliance Educational Consulting. And before you close out, take a deep breath. Remember that caring for yourself isn't extra, it's essential. Whether you're an educator seeking rest or a school leader reimagining support, you're part of this growing community of care.